Welcome to this GEHRIMED demonstration. Today I hope to demonstrate some of the basic functionality as well as the ease with which an encounter can be entered. By the end of the demonstration, I would hope that you will have a reasonable working knowledge of the three main screens in GEHRIMED and a basic understanding of the encounter entry workflow. The screen you see is from my iPad. Additionally, I'll be using the cloud-based Dragon Naturally Speaking feature. So, let's get started. Of note, this demonstration is done with a dummy database and the patients are not real. So what you see here on the initial screen is the login view. The first thing that you'll notice in the upper portion of the screen are the blue and red lines. Also, you'll see that there are 4 facilities in this view. Those 4 facilities represent where I would be going to take care of the patients. Additionally, the blue bar are my patients in that facility, and the red bar represents the remainder of the patients in that facility. In the left upper corner, you'll see where we can change some views. For instance, if I wanted to look at my coding history in comparison to the practice and others, I can click on that, and it'll show my summary versus the company's summary of coding history as well as national averages. It just shows that some of this can be changed to your view and what information you would like to see. Below the facility area are the patient's charts that are open and need to be signed. So in other words, the unsigned encounters in this banner are here, and it shows that I have 20 total unsigned encounters. Then in the left lower corner we have messages, and then next to that you see triage, and then new encounter, search, quality programs, and e-prescribing. The message section is where we have inter-office email, and so I can have the facility and or my partners converse in this methodology, and it's secure. So in other words, if I click on this, it shows that I have 11 messages open, and I can review those messages, draft new messages, send trash messages, etc. Then next to that we have the triage section, and right now you'll see where there are 2 triage messages that are open. And this can be facility information sent to me that may say you need to see this patient. It shows the patient has fallen at 2:30 on 1/8/18, neurochecks are being instituted, and perhaps I want to see that patient. I can go directly from here and start the encounter entry by clicking on the issue. Also, I can resolve that issue if necessary and provide information as appropriate, save that or cancel that information. I can also go back and review. I can see other hidden messages or triage messages that I've had in the past. So from this view, I can go to the second landing page where we spend a fair amount of time, and that's the schedule. So by clicking on the area here, let's say Northwood SNF, which is the third down, I'm going to click on the blue section, and it takes me into my schedule. And you'll see some tabs up here. One's showing a number 10, another 13, another 45, another 1. If I go across those tabs, you'll see that the list changes because the initial list here is those are the scheduled patients that I need to see today. The next is the provider census. That is my list of patients in this particular facility. And again, this is in the Northwood Skilled Nursing Facility. And then you also see where there's 45. That's the facility's entire census. So I can look and scroll up and down on that to find patients that may be my partner's patients or patients that are not part of my census. And finally, we have a tab for facility discharge. This is a holding tank for patients that have been discharged to the hospital or to home. Patients will stay on this section for 30 days and then be deleted, though they're always in the database and can always be found, but they won't be on the facility discharge list. It just allows for easy access to bring them back into your database because commonly patients do come back to the facility after a short period of being outside the facility. I'm going back to the scheduled patients just to show you how this is an interactive screen. So the first thing is here under location, which is in the left upper corner. It says 106 on the west wing. So this is room 106 on the west wing and tells me where that patient is. If I click on that, I can change the room number, I can change the floor, and immediately have that entered. Once there's integration with some of the facility EHRs, that information can be downloaded and is automatically present. The next thing you see is a small eye. It's the eye of information, and I click on that and it will show me the patient's picture, and I can take that picture from my iPad very easily, but it also shows a quick demographic bit of information about the patients, the age, etc., and their status. Now next to that is the patient's name, Tom Brown, and if I click on this, I'll go into the patient's chart. I will click on this and go into the patient's chart, but this is not an area of focus on today's review. Here's the patient's chart again, and it includes problems, medicines, prescriptions, other attachments, procedures, where we keep a lot of our faxes, etc. Again, that's not the focus of today's discussion. Next to that, you'll see a small icon down here with an arrow, which is a discharge arrow. And this part of the schedule, I can go directly into discharging the patient if they happen to have left before I came in to see them today, or if they're going to leave in the future. In the right lower corner, it says discharge and create an encounter. I can create the discharge encounter for this patient as well from this screen and have that charge passed. Then you see where it says my last visit, and it gives you the information about that. If I click on this, it'll tell you when the patient was last seen. And again, you can see all of the different visits recently that were done on this patient. And then also which provider, if I go to the next screen, last seen and by what provider were they last seen. So here is mine, and if you look at others, you'll see where maybe the nurse practitioner or the physician's assistant has seen the patient in a previous visit. In the colored section of the screen, you'll see where you have an information. Here's where you can manage your patient visits, the ones that you may have in the future, regulatory, etc. You can add a new visit by clicking on the plus sign right here and adding a new date. If you want to have your other provider see the patient, you can click and say, I'd like to have them seen in 3 days or a month or whenever, for what kind of visit, an acute visit, and the visit date would be whatever date you choose and what provider you want them to see by, and perhaps a note. You save that and that will be added to this schedule. Next to that, you have information about the patient's visit as well that can be clicked upon and viewed in that fashion. So what you have is an interactive screen. It keeps track of your provider census. Again, that's this tab. And color coding on the right shows that you have yellow, which is they need to be seen today. Red, the patient is overdue for their visit. White, there is no scheduled visit for that patient. And green, the patient is not yet required to be seen. So on your schedule, typically you're only going to see the red and the yellow. And you can, of course, though, go and see any patient in the facility by clicking and adding. Now, once we have determined what patients we want to see, directly from this screen, in the far left corner, I can create an encounter and start the encounter. So this is going to be the third area of focus. I'm now opening the encounter screen, which is the typical way that we're going to add all of the information about today's visit. So what we have across the top is the banner that just includes the demographic information regarding the patient. Also a quick way to go to the electronic prescribing area, that's the ERX, a quick way to view quality measures, and also a quick way to go to other information outside, web-based information and educational information. Just below the banner, you'll see where it says History, Review of Systems, Vital Signs, Physical Examination, Labs and Radiology, Summary Plans, Diagnosis and Assessment Plan, and Other. You may not use all of these sections in your when you're doing the encounter, but each tab that you see here will show you a different screen. So when I click on the history screen, as is, and it's currently focused with the blue highlight, then you'll see on the left-hand side we have a number of items in that tab that can be addressed. In the middle section is where the information inputted is going to be seen for that particular item. On the right-hand side, you'll see where it says normals and previous encounters. Right now, normals is highlighted. If I click on previous encounters, you'll see where we have information from previous encounters. I'll go back to normals. Normals, you'll notice, are divided into three sections. There are system-delivered normals. There are group normals. So at the group level, if you're in a group, you can set normals for your group, and then you'll see where it says user normals. User normals are those normals that you can input, and you can do that immediately when you're in the section here. I've just clicked on the center section, and if I've had some text that I wanted to add to this section, you'll see where it says set as normal. When I do that, it will create on the fly my own normal for this individual. On the left-hand side, we'll now go up in the left upper corner. You'll see where it says Review Systems. I'm going to click on that. You'll see it's a similar view once again. That now we have different items. So we have the Review Systems with general, eyes, ears, nose, and throat. You'll also notice that we have the normals and the previous. I can chart by just clicking on those dots, and I'll just do that. Let's say if I wanted the normal general to come in, no fever, chills, or sweats reported. Click on the previous value for ear, nose, and throat, and this will look back to the last time that was entered. It may be a week ago, it may be 5 years ago. Respiratory, I can just click on the normals, or I can click on previous. If I want to set all as normal, I can click on the normal value right here, and all of the values will be normal, and then I can unclick those, or essentially chart by exception. And likewise, if I click on the previous button, I can have all previous values for these particular areas. Now, one thing of interest is also on the normals and previous on the right-hand side of the screen. In the previous encounters, if I want to see where something came from, I can click on it, and it'll immediately take me to that note where that information was entered. I can close that, and I'm right back to where I want it to be. I can look back at the normals. I can add, modify, delete, and change. If I just click in the center, I can clear the field, and I can say reports knee pain. And I'm going to show you this in a smooth flow in just a moment, and also introduce a couple of other features like macros. Let's go to the physical exam. Physical exam is set up much like the Review Systems with the normal sections, I can choose all previous. And then if some things do not apply, chart by exception by taking those items off the screen. Then we have diagnosis and assessment. I'm not going to go over the labs or the summary of plans, though some would choose to use summary of plans, but diagnosis and assessment looks a little bit different. This is not the same screen as what you would see under the Review Systems or physical exam. In this instance, in the left upper corner of the screen, you'll see where it says CPT codes. This is where you'll choose your code for that visit. In the left lower portion of the screen, you'll see where it says assessments. This is where I'm going to add problems, and they will move into that section as I enter them by touching on the plus sign in the right-hand side. So you'll see the problems over here: essential hypertension, hypothyroidism, controlled gout. By clicking on the plus sign, it enters that into the section on the left lower corner. There are a number of other parts to this where, for instance, if I wanted to look at previous information about that assessment, I can click on that and it'll show me those encounters and what I said about those encounters. And likewise, you'll see where there's a little blinking line right next to the problem list in the right upper corner here. This is where I can add a diagnosis. And I'll show you that information as I go through an encounter. So what I'd like to do at this point is give you an idea of how this workflow looks in the real world. And to do that, I'm going to use Dragon Naturally Speaking. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see where there's a series of darkened rectangles, and those will be moving with green when it is accepting my speech. On the right-hand corner is a little red icon with a microphone. That's what I tap when I want the Dragon Naturally Speaking feature to start. So what I'm going to do is just move through a fairly quick summary of this patient's visit. And again, I'm going to use macros. When I say something like hypertension history, it'll insert text that's characteristic of what I want to say. I manage those macros right here in this options section where it says Manage Macros. And all I have to do that is create a trigger phrase, and then the expanded text takes literally 10 seconds to do so, and you'll have that phrase captured. So here we go. Let's go through the encounter in this way that is typically done. Let's start with Chief Complaint. I'm going to now click on the icon in the right lower corner, and the rest of what you see is going to be done mostly with dragging. Chief Complaint. The patient is seen for follow-up of hypertension, diabetes, congestive heart failure, and gout, period. Hypertension history, paragraph. Diabetes history with insulin, paragraph. Hypothyroidism history, paragraph. In regards to the patient's gout, there have been no inflammatory changes or recent complications, period. He is tolerating the allopurinol well, period. The patient has had mild respiratory symptoms with a cough for the last 3 days, period. Weight 182 pounds, height 6 feet 0 inches, pulse 82, blood pressure 120/68, O2 saturation 98%, temperature 98.6, respiratory rate 14. Hypertension assessment with labs. Hypothyroidism assessment, no labs. In regards to the patient's gout, there have been no complications, period. He is tolerating the medication well, period. No laboratory today, period. We'll continue to monitor, period. 993. And I'm done with that encounter, and now I'm seeing the view of that encounter. You have choices on how you want this presented. You can have it where it's split documentation style. You can have it where it's default documentation of a single. The beauty of this screen is that in this preview mode, you can go back and change anything that's been entered. So if I wanted to say that the patient has mild respiratory symptoms, and I said, no, actually they haven't had that, I can click on it. And I'm back in the area where I just was with that corrected. At this point, I have the choice of signing off on this information, signing off on the note, and you'll see at the top, under just beneath the banner, where it says electronically sign and close or electronically sign and view. All I need to do at this point is click on electronically sign and view, and what it will do is show this note to any other provider that logs in. Additionally, it will send the charge, the 99307 charge, to the billing system. It will send this note to the facility via either secure email, secure fax, electronically if it's integrated with the facility EHR, and the provider does not have to do anything further at this point. It's completed.